Today's episode is brought to you by Musical Theater Radio's merch store. Looking for that perfect gift for someone or just want to treat yourself to some great musical theater themed merch? Head to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the All Things Theater button on the homepage and check out all the different designs available. And now, today's interview. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. As you all know, I love catching up with past guests, especially when they have some exciting news. Now, this interview was supposed to happen a couple of months ago, but sometimes, life gets in the way. A sickness, a trip, work. There's always something. But today, we can finally connect and talk about the new album for the musical Tommy Rhodes, which dropped back in late December 2024. Now, to catch us up on what's going on in their lives, as well as the album and whatever else they want to talk about, let's welcome back to the show, Mateo Chavez Lewis. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Jean-Paul. Hi, everybody at home. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know how they're doing, but let's just assume they're good.
I hope you're all doing well.
Awesome. So, as you know, you've been on the show before, so you know how the beginning works. We ask for a 30-second bio so everybody gets to know who you are. Who are you in 30 seconds?
All right, start the timer. My name is Mateo Chavez Lewis. I'm a musical theater composer and music director. I grew up in Toronto. I'm now kind of splitting my time between Toronto and New York City. And I write musicals that make use of the power that musical theater has to tell really nuanced stories, because you've always got a medium in the music that can say something different than the words are saying. And that's a great way to shine a light on all of those very nuanced things that we experience as human beings. And
Sweet.
I think that was 30 seconds.
That works for me. If it was more or less, I'm good with it. All right. So the question is, what have you been up to? What's been going on since the last time we talked? I think it's about a year ago. I think last May of 2024.
Yeah. Well, the last time I was here, we were talking about Tommy Rhodes, which was going to have its little world premiere in this small indie theater in Toronto. Tommy Rhodes is a show that I wrote the music and lyrics for, and I collaborated on the book as well with my collaborator, Ava Lee Keller. It's loosely based on a true mystery about a mother who loses her son and then finds this other boy who she convinces herself is her son when he's not. And it's just about how we as human beings can convince ourselves to believe something that is obviously not true just because we want to believe it so badly. And I think that's especially relevant right now in a time where, fake news, quote unquote, is all the rage, and fact checking is being rolled back on social media sites. And we're all in our little echo chambers, and we just believe whatever the people in our community post on the internet about, and we don't honor experts as much as we have in the past, and we don't get our news from reliable sources as much as we did in the past. I think it's especially relevant now to talk about the way that believing something just because you want to believe it and not because the evidence is telling you that it's true can be really dangerous and really harmful. So that's what Tommy Rhodes is about. We had our premiere in June of 2024, so just shortly after you and I spoke, and it went really well. It was just a short run in this tiny, tiny little black box theater in the East End of Toronto, but we sold out basically the entire run. We got some great critical responses and everything, so we got a little bit of money to put together a cast album. So that's kind of the biggest thing that's happened in the last 6 months. We went to Patcha Sound Studios in Toronto, and we got the whole cast together and recorded this album of all of the music. It's really simple, bare bones. It's just piano and voices, and it definitely has a homebrew feel to it. But I'm really, really proud of it. I think the music really shines on this album. I think you get a good sense of the story from listening to it front to back, because so much of the story is told through music in this show that when you just listen to the music, you get a lot of the story and the emotional arc of the characters and everything. So I'm really, really proud of the album as a cohesive work of art on its own, you know, and I'm really glad that people are going to be able to listen to it all over the world who weren't in Toronto or who are just finding out about it now after we did our run, and hopefully this can lead to a professional premiere somewhere, either in Canada or in the States. That's kind of where we're looking now.
Very nice. Now, before we talk more about the album, I'd like to take it back to last June. Um, Once the run is done back there, what did you discover and learn from seeing it in front of an audience? You know, because it lives in your head, you hear it, you know how it sounds, and then it gets in front of into the bodies of actors, which is great, but it's the audience, right? What did you discover when watching the audience? Like, was there moments when, ooh, I didn't think they'd react that way, or something to that effect?
The the I think I learned the most from watching the actors.
Mhm.
I as a writer, often when you're writing things down for the first time and you don't have the sets and you don't have the lighting and you don't have the actors and you don't have all of the other artists working on the show, you feel a pressure to put everything on the page, right? You feel like you've got to tell the entire story yourself. And so you put a lot in that script that doesn't need to be there, or you feel the impulse to put a lot in that script that doesn't need to be there. Watching it come to life, watching the actors on stage in front of an audience, they bring so much, and the lighting designer brings so much, and the set design brings so much that you actually have to do a lot less as a writer than you think you do. And that was something that I learned from this experience is the moments where I was nervous that I wasn't being clear enough in the writing and I felt like I had not done enough were the moments that were the most powerful on stage, because in those moments the actors could bring the material to a new level. They could bring something new to it. They could infuse it with a little bit of their own zhuzh.
Mhm.
And we had these phenomenal actors who are mostly we had like emerging early career actors because it was like a profit share semi-pro production. Um, and so many of these actors are going to go on to enormous careers. Gillian Robinson, who played our lead, Leslie Rhodes, is just like ridiculous. The pipes on her is incredible. Katie Crompton, who played Charlotte, I have to shout them out as well. They have this monologue at the end that every single performance, it felt like they were just teetering on the brink of emotional collapse. It was unbelievable to watch, especially in such a small space. Bella Wolder, I also want to shout out, who immediately after the show closed, we got her in the studio to record her parts for the cast album like 2 weeks later because she subsequently went directly to a Disney Cruise Lines contract. Also, just an unbelievable voice and an unbelievable actor. Um, and so the moments in the script where I didn't do as much. And I just reading the script, just sitting in my room reading it, I was like, I don't think the audience is going to get this. I don't think I'm putting enough into it. Those were actually the strongest, most powerful moments on stage. So that was a big lesson for me as a writer. And it's part of the reason why I'm gonna get a little bit on a soapbox right now because I think that in Canadian theater we have a bad habit of over workshopping. There are so many musicals that I know that I've worked on as an actor or that uh I know the composer and I've gotten to see it develop over the course of many, many years, and they do workshop after workshop after workshop after workshop, where they just get a couple actors in a room to read it at music stands or whatever, and then they go back and they make changes in the writing, and then they come back and they read it at music stands or whatever, and they keep doing this for years and years and years, and they trap these musicals in this cycle of over workshopping. But when you actually get all of the other elements working together, lights, costumes, sets, when the actors are rehearsed and off book and can fully embody the characters, you you learn so much about your show that you could never learn from a workshop where things are done at music stands. I understand that productions are financially difficult to make them happen, but I know of many instances in Canadian theater where a company has invested the same amount into 10 workshops that they could have invested into one production. And I really am a believer in just putting the thing up, because most of the glaring flaws in the script you can iron out just by reading it around a table for 2 hours with, some pizza with your buddies. You can find the glaring flaws in your script just by doing that. And then once you've ironed out the script enough doing that, just put it up and get it in front of people, because that's what we did for Tommy Rhodes, and it was awesome. I learned so much more than I could have learned from a music stand workshop, or even 10 music stand workshops for the same budget. So
Yeah.
that's my soapbox for Canadian musical theater.
Nice. I know you went right into the studio almost for the album, but I'm curious for after it's all done, the audience leaves, it sits with you. What you wanted works, what didn't work, what you want to change.
Hmm.
Did you go right into some writing on it, or did you let it percolate for a while and let it sit with you, and then you went back and went, okay, this might need work, or this or whatever.
I gotta tell you, I haven't even really gone back to it.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, like I've just been I've had a few other projects that
Hmm.
I've been working on, and I've just Tommy Rhodes has been kind of sitting in the back of my mind. Um, the cast album was a project of its own, and it was less about rewriting and more about just capturing what we
Yeah.
had done. Um, and since then, I've just been kind of putting it to bed and letting it percolate a little bit. There are a few big changes that I'm thinking of making, um, and they're a little too big to feel good about tackling them right away.
Yeah.
I think there are people I have to talk to and other creative voices that I need to bring on for it to take that next creative step. So I'm working on other stuff right now and waiting for the right moment to get back to Tommy Rhodes.
No, I totally get that. It's what sometimes some people want to jump right in. Sometimes you do need to let it sit and do a thing and just get away from it, right? And just do something else. Um, but let's talk about the album. Which you didn't get away with. You just you got into that. So what was
Yeah.
that like for you? Is this the first album you've worked on? And what was your experience of putting this together?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I've never worked on any sort of like audio, anything really. I've,
Mhm.
messed around in Logic on my, computer at home, but never seriously. I really didn't know what I was doing. The only guide I had to go off of was I've listened to cast recordings religiously, so I know what a cast recording kind of sounds like and what the rhythm of it is. Um, I had a really good chat with a mentor of mine, Anna K. Jacobs,
Mhm.
who is the composer of Teeth, the musical, among other things. And she was, at the time I spoke to her, she was prepping the Teeth cast album. And that conversation that I had with her about that was really, really helpful. The way that
Mhm.
she was thinking about tackling the album gave me kind of a roadmap for how I was going to tackle mine on a much smaller scale. It was a lot about making decisions about what lines do we need to include for the audience to understand the context? What scenes can we cut out? There's a song called The Water in the Bayou, which is in the show, it's broken up into a bunch of little chunks, and there's big, long scenes in the middle of each section. The whole sequence is like 9 minutes long on stage, but on the album, it's 4 minutes long because we took out all of the scenes and we just sang it all the way through. Whereas Justice, which is another long sequence, is a pretty long track on the album because a lot of those scenes are not easily cuttable in order to get the in order to understand what the song is, and why the characters are saying those lyrics and whatnot. So all of those decisions had to be made. And then also uh, plans for how we were going to record it. We wanted to do we wanted to do it all live off the floor, which was a bit of a bold decision because it's kind of, 1970s rock band style. You have all the singers and the piano player all in the same space. What that allows us to do is we don't have to sing to a metronome or a click track. It can be very fluid tempo wise, and that's how a lot of the music is written, to be very fluid like that. So that worked really well. The downside of that was that if one singer messed up one word, we would have to go all the way back and everyone would have to re-record all of their parts. If the piano player hit one sour note, we would have to scrap the whole take, which made that a challenge. So we had to break up the song into chunks and find places where we could edit takes together that you wouldn't notice, so that we would be working in much shorter chunks, so that if someone hit a wrong note or something, we could go back only those 30 seconds instead of going all the way back to the beginning of the song. Things like that. So a lot of work that I had never thought about that goes into making an album like that. And it was really fun, and I would love to do it again at some point. I really found a passion for it because it is capturing the show. It is creating something that is long lasting. The great part of theater is that it's in the moment and it's ephemeral and it's happening right now. The sad part about that is that once it's done and it's gone and no one can ever hear it again. So cast albums are our way to preserve these beautiful things that these artists work on. And, I've listened to cast albums over and over and over from shows that premiered before my parents were born. And when I was born, half the cast was already dead, but I've got their voices in my head and in my heart because I've listened to them so many times. So it was really special to get to be a part of something like that on a very small scale. It was nice.
That's very cool. I completely agree with you. Just to talk about me for 1 second, in the station, that's what we
Let's
want
do
to
it.
do with the station, right? It's to support these works and get them heard, because like you said, once they're gone, they're gone. If you don't have a recording, you're never going to hear them again. And even when they do get recorded, you may never hear them because they just didn't become. I have so many shows on my station that I had to rip from LPs because no one's ever made them digital, except for me,
Yeah.
maybe, right? And
Yeah.
because they only existed within. I have so many Canadian musicals that nobody knows because they're only on albums from the 70s or the 60s or whatever.
Hmm.
But I completely agree. We've lost so many shows, big, small, just because we didn't have the technology. And that's the nice thing about now. It's not easy now, but it's a lot easier.
Certainly.
It's a
Certainly in
lot
a lot of
easier.
ways.
You can
Yeah.
get your phone in front of somebody's mouth and you still have a pretty damn good recording of it
Yeah.
and manipulate it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about where it's going now, because we're going to hear so many shows that we're going to hear 10 in 100 years after we're all dead. They're still going to be around for people to hear. So
Yeah. I definitely hope that's the case for Tommy Rhodes. I hope that uh this cast album it does have, like I said, it does have a little bit of a passion project slash homebrew slash, I don't want to say amateur feel to it, but it's the audio. I mean, I mix the audio myself, and I'm not an audio engineer,
yeah.
so it does have a little bit of that charm, if you will. Um, I will say the performances on it are Broadway caliber. Like all of the singers and the piano players that we had three piano players, including myself, on different tracks on the album. and like Jess and Ethan, who played the piano, are both fantastic. All of the actors are amazing.
Mhm.
So in that sense, it feels really, really high quality and high level.
Yeah.
And then it's got a little bit of that, like, that background hiss of a of a of a home studio kind of vibes.
You know what?
Um,
There's nothing wrong with that because you know what? Eating in a five-star restaurant with china and everything, or eating out of a styrofoam container, if it's good food, it's good, right? It
that's
doesn't
the
matter.
thing.
It
That's the
doesn't matter
thing.
the presentation.
And I hope that this album will lead to opportunities for us to develop the show further
Mhm.
and bring the show to more people and
Right.
eventually make a cast album that is much higher budget and much more polished.
Mhm.
I would like for that to happen in the future. I want this show to go off Broadway or Broadway, and I want to make it a cast album
Yeah.
of that cast with the full orchestrations and everything. So this is it kind of feels like a demo recording in some ways, in that it feels like the first step for this show and
Mhm.
not the end goal. But if you're listening to this interview and you are interested in hearing the first step of a show like that, I think you'll really find a lot of magic in this album.
Yeah. Hey, all the classic legends shows of musical theater started exactly where you are. So
Exactly. Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. How long did it take you to record the show? Like how long were you in the booth and then for yourself the editing? And I got a second question. Were you at the piano or were you behind the glass
So
with the
I
show?
was I was all over the place.
Mhm.
In the run of the show, I did not play the piano.
Okay.
I The piano was traded off between Jess and Ethan. Jess Looper and Ethan Rotenberg. Shout out to
Mhm.
fantastic pianists. Um, for the album, there were some songs that I played myself, and there were some that Jess played and some that Ethan played.
Mhm.
I played I think all three of Leslie's big ballads. I'm Not Wearing Black, Clean, and Everything in Between are the names of those three tracks. I'm pretty sure I played all three of those. Um, and if I'm making a mistake and taking credit for work that isn't mine, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure that's me on all three of those tracks. Um, and I played Charlotte's Soliloquy and I played a few other ones. But for the most part, I was not even behind the glass. I was in the room.
Mhm.
I was adding a tenor vocal, so my voice is in the ensemble, and I was conducting at the same time to keep everyone together. So I was always very involved, um, for every take and every moment. Um, which again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was in a position that I had never been in before, trying to be a leader in a room that I had never been in before. I'd never been in a recording studio like this before. And that was a very different experience than, for example, being a director for the show when it went up at the Red Sandcastle Theater, because I've been in theater rehearsal rooms my whole life. That's where I live. I grew
Yeah.
up in a theater rehearsal room. I know what that room looks like, so I felt much more confident about my ability to be a leader in that room. Um, in the recording studio, it was really
Yeah.
flying by the seat of my pants, trying to figure it out, and asking for help from Guillermo, who is the recording engineer,
Mhm.
who knows recording studios really, really well. And he was a huge, huge help. He was amazing.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on the run and the album. What have
Thank
you got?
you.
Have you got anything that you going on that you've been working on that you want to promote or talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always doing a lot of teaching. I teach vocal lessons. I teach I one of my favorite things to do is teach songwriting and do
Mm,
songwriting coaching, because I feel like we don't think about songwriting as something that you can take lessons in or something that you can learn how to do. We think of it as just being like this innate gift that some people have and some people don't. You kind of have to figure out for yourself.
mhm.
But I have found that just learning the basics of how songs tend to be structured and understanding why those rules work so that you can understand when to break them
Mhm.
levels up your songwriting so much. I have become so much of a better writer from the time that I've spent working with my own mentors. And so I'm really passionate about working with young people on their songwriting and
Mhm.
to hone the craft of what it means to write a song, especially a musical theater song. So I'm doing a lot of teaching and I'm always open to, if people send me a message on my website, we can hang out. I can help you with your songs and stuff. Um, and I'm writing a few different shows right now. They're all very different, and I'm working on them with different collaborators. So I've
Mhm.
got a really interesting palette of stuff that I'm working on, which is a fun place to be in because I've always been a person who is really laser focused on one project.
Mhm.
And this year, for the first time, I'm kind of spread out across a lot of different things, which makes my life a lot more vibrant and interesting. Because on the one hand, I'm writing one show with my collaborator, Nick Flato, who's this director producer extraordinaire in New York who's uh, foraying into the writing side of things for the first time
Mhm.
and has just such an innate understanding of how theater works and such a gift for the form that he is picking up the skill of uh, book writing so quickly. And he's just one of the best people I know, just so kind and generous and wise and grounded, and he's amazing. And together, Nick and I are writing a show that is about Philip Johnson, who was a renowned architect. He designed like the Seagram building in New York, one of the Lincoln Center buildings, but he's perhaps most famous for building a house made entirely of glass on his
Hmm.
property in New Canaan, Connecticut. He basically invented floor to ceiling windows. What's less well known, though, is that across the walkway, he built a house that's completely opaque, a brick house with barely any windows. And that's where he hid his secret gay lover.
Ah,
So
interesting.
we've got this guy who he has a very kind of complicated history. He was not a great guy in a lot of ways, by a lot of accounts. Um, and we have this man who chooses to dedicate his life to loving Philip, even though it means sacrificing a lot of his autonomy and a lot of his uh, freedom,
Hmm.
because he has to hide himself from society in order to protect Philip's reputation. And we were like, what goes into David's decision to choose that life? What kind of a person would dedicate themselves to a life of such a selfless kind of love? And is that not equally admirable as someone like Philip who dedicates their life to creating great works of art at the expense of their personal relationships and, in some cases, their morals? I think that's a really interesting question. What what does make a life worth celebrating? Is it the legacy that you leave behind, or is it the love that you share while you're here?
Hmm.
So that's one show. It's like a very slow paced, deep, character driven show with very kind of artsy experimental music and big emotional ballads, and I say it's a star vehicle for the set designer because we're gonna have a lot of,
Yeah.
architecture flying in. It's gonna be like the Lion King, but instead of animals, it's architecture and famous buildings that are being represented by
Hmm.
the stagecraft. So that's the goal for that show.
Nice.
On the other side of the spectrum, I've also got the show that I'm writing with a collaborator of mine named Brooke DeSpirito, which is inspired by the 2022 chess cheating scandal. And it's about a 17-year-old chess prodigy who decides to cheat at the World Chess Championship by using a vibrating butt plug to
Mm.
get Morse code messages from a chess supercomputer.
Yes.
And it's called The Opening, which is a bit of a chin scratcher.
Mm.
But but then that's just like a really like funny, charming high school buddy comedy between this chess prodigy and his friend who helps him cheat, who doesn't know anything about chess,
Yeah.
and their relationship throughout it. And it's just charming and funny, and it's just about like teenage boys being stupid, and it's totally like the exact opposite from the Glass House musical. So
Yeah.
it's been really fun to kind of, you know, live on both sides of that spectrum
Mhm.
this year. And then the last thing is a parody of the musical Gypsy about Gypsy Rose Blanchard, which
Okay.
I got asked to write to put music to. My collaborators Kevin and Erica already had a script with the dialogue and the lyrics and everything. So my task was just to, as a composer, just write music that sounded reminiscent of the musical Gypsy. Um, so I've been studying that amazing score by Julie Stein,
Yeah.
and 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 trying to send it up in a loving, playful way. Um, in this musical about Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who, if you don't know, is kind of a big TikTok star right now because she got embroiled in this very interesting murder case,
Hmm.
which some people are like, she's the murderer. Some people are like, she was a victim in the situation. And everybody is just following her on TikTok now, which is so weird. Anyways, it's a weird situation. We're kind of satirizing the whole thing and the glamorization of, true crime and whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and
Nice.
my contribution to that is literally just writing music that sounds like Gypsy.
Well, that's fantastic. All this stuff you have going on. That's great. I look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. So the question is, how can people learn more about yourself? The websites, the socials, where can people go listen to Tommy Rhodes and all that fun stuff?
Tommy Rhodes is available wherever music is available. Apple Music, Spotify, look it up. Tommy Rhodes, original cast recording, and Rhodes is spelled Rhodes. My name is Mateo Chavez Lewis, Mateo, one T in Mateo. So you can look me up. I've got a website, www.mateochavezlewis.com. I've got an Instagram at Mateo Chavez Lewis. The good thing about having a big long name like Mateo Chavez Lewis is that there's only one.
Yeah,
So
I
so
get
I'm
that.
easy to find, easy to find. Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I'm on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Music Theater Theory, where I talk about, the music theory behind my favorite performances and my favorite uh, works of musical theater. So I'm all over the internet. I'm trying to be all over the internet in a positive and constructive way. Um, yeah,
That's awesome. Well, again, congratulations. We play this the show on the station, so everybody can tune in here and listen to it as well. But make sure you can listen to the whole thing by in all of those places that you can listen to your cast albums that you got to support. So, congratulations on that, everything you've done, and it's
thank
great
you so
catching up with you
much.
again.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Jean Paul. I really love our chats. And to everyone listening at home, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you listen to the album. I hope it moves you and makes you think about truth and what that means to you.
Nice. All right. Well, everybody, we were just speaking with Mateo Chavez Lewis, the creator of Tommy Rhodes and all the other shows that you just heard about. Watch for them in the future. And when you see a new musical, listen to it. Go see it. Support it because today's new musicals are tomorrow's classics. So get out there, get to a theater, get to the internet and listen to these people. All right. Tune in next week as we speak with another guest or guest about the life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.